I want you to get together.
Hello, everyone. So I haven't really done one of these relaxed talks in a very long time, but I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it's time to just kick back and get back to basics and maybe do what I used to do on this channel before all the clowns and the heavy eschatology and praterism stuff. For those who have come to my channel recently, um, this is primarily what my channel originally was. It was a meta commentary on what it means to be a truther and all the pitfalls and stumbling blocks people get along the way of waking up and trying to share things with loved ones. So, if you don't know, I have a series called The Truth of Therapy Sessions, which is my podcast. It's my relative weekly show. I don't always stay too consistent, but I try to do them every Sunday. And Tips for Truthers is just there for me to talk with other people. I get guests on to share their journey to discovering the truth and, waking up, I suppose, for lack of a better term. And, I try to get some relatively big names on the show this day and age. But in the past, it was just me talking to the audience and sharing my stories and sharing the type of things I had to deal with when trying to tell my loved ones. And I also have a good back and forth with the listeners as well in the chat, and they shared their stories. And sometimes I had call-ins so people could vent. And I think that's all we really need as a community. We need to be able to say these things out loud, say our thoughts and fears and worries about knowing this type of information. When you hear yourself speak out loud, it's therapy. It helps you organize your thoughts better and understand how you're feeling better. And I kind of have always wanted this community to be something like that, as well as obviously a place where I explore wild concepts and get deep and trippy on certain topics. But somebody recently sent me a message, one of the regulars in the Telegram, and she was asking me to make a video, which I'm doing now, kind of giving advice on how to broach these type of topics with your spouse, with your husband or wife, and this can apply to boyfriend or girlfriend as well, your significant other, whatever that is. And I guess I'm kind of flattered this person thinks I can have the answers to this necessarily. But you may be aware, I'll get them up here, some of the thumbnails I made, but I do have another series I started maybe a few months ago now, 4 months ago, called Tips for Truthers. And these are short burst tips that I've kind of picked up over my decade doing this, where I'm just discussing how to be a decent conspiracy theorist and get other people on board with the ideas effectively, and also pitfalls to make sure not to fall into, or advice on how to best cope with or deal with the information. So that's what this Tips of Truth is for. And I'm always discovering more tips, more things to add to this. And in a way, I guess this is another episode of Tips for Truthers. But I'm not going to call it that because the format I'm doing right now is a bit long-winded, and I think this may be a good introductory video for the new members, who have come up because I've gained a lot of subscribers since I made one of these videos last, and it may be a good insight to the type of conversations I like to have next to the deep conspiracy stuff. So on the topic of how do you tell these things to your wife or husband who isn't a conspiracy theorist, how do you broach these type of topics? I guess I can only give my own experience, really, my own ways of doing this. Because I'm going to be honest with you guys, my wife isn't really a conspiracy theorist. She doesn't really think about these things necessarily. Not certainly not to the extent I do, And I've got off the deep end with conspiracy. I'm all in. But that's just not her background. And when I met my wife 5 years ago, I wasn't really in the world myself either. I kind of got out and never thought I'd come back in because I had my channel taken away from me, and I wasn't making videos about it anymore. I was a bit jaded and disconnected and angry because of the way it went down and some of the horrible things I was learning were perhaps getting to me. But when I met my wife, and conspiracy wasn't a big part of my conversation. Now, she knew I used to have a conspiracy channel. I explained to her what I used to do, and that just wasn't her world. And in a way, I never forgot any of the things I learnt, but I was just focusing on trying to be a good Christian in a way, and f- focusing less on the doom and gloom aspects of conspiratorial research and discussing it at no end, and more focusing on building my life, a good life, with this woman I'd fallen in love with. And that's what happened. We got married. We're building a family. We've been trying to build a home, and that's where I was at. And then at the start of the year, I've managed to come back again to the conspiracy world and start my channel back up because I left the place of work that forced me to be silent, and I went self-employed. And me and my wife since then, we've had to broach this topic of wacky, crazy conspiracy theories that, to be fair to my wife, I don't think she necessarily knew just how far I was into this type of stuff and just the type of things I think about because it just wasn't her world. It's not something she understands or would have any context to understand and has never really thought about, So I have been slowly introducing her to the things and concepts and ideas that I've been making videos about. And in a way, I guess I kind of trapped her. I married the woman, and now she's stuck with me and has to listen to me go on about conspiracy theories, in a way. But that wasn't my intention. And I guess the way I've always thought about this stuff, um, is that you shouldn't let these topics necessarily end or affect your relationships with your loved ones as much as a lot of people do. Um, it shouldn't be the defining factor of your relationships with people necessarily. And I know there's some hardcore Christian types out there who would say you should have no fellowship with unbelievers and um, that type of thing, And my wife's relationship with God is a complicated one. I know her life story, and I know she has had it hard. Okay. And her issues with the Father are understandable, and that's something she's working on. And I'm just there as encouragement while she's on that journey. And I'm not going to force anything on her in any way, shape, or form. And the tips you're seeing on the screen, I do live by these relatively, and I've picked up a thing or two over the time doing this that no matter who you're talking to, whether it's your wife or your friend or a stranger, there's ways to talk about these topics that aren't going to just blow up in your face and cause relationships to just end dramatically, which unfortunately is how it goes for a lot of people. And what I do is, I've made my wife aware of the numerous topics of what I talk about. She knows my beliefs thoroughly and my beliefs on God. And we do talk about it regularly, but when I do, I listen. I try to be quiet. I don't interrupt. And I let them get their thoughts processes out. And when I get the chance, I'll explain my worldview in a calm manner with a bit of levity, a bit of lightheartedness, a bit of a smile, making it clear that, I still love you and this is not going to break us up and this is not going to be something that we define our relationship by. Okay. Knowing this stuff isn't a reason to not love somebody and not have a relationship. And slowly, when she wants to know something, she'll ask. And I will give the answer. And sometimes I go on a bit too much. Maybe I give the long answer that she's not necessarily after, as is the excitable nature of the conspiracy theorist. We're just like that, aren't we? And we can have a laugh about it, and I think a sense of humor is always a good way to tackle these subjects. Always keeping it light, keeping it fun. Don't try not to be too over the top serious about these type of topics because we're in an industry, we're in a realm, we're in a game here where we could actually be wrong about a lot of things we theorize, and we could be proven wrong about these many times, in the future. So it's best to give when it comes to any given topic, just give the overview of what it is and explain what people think may be the theories and worldviews to take into account. And understand, that make it clear I don't know the ultimate answer, but this is what people believe. I think that's the best way to describe any topic. And you may have your beliefs about how a specific thing actually is, but it might be best not to say what that is yet because you might not believe that in a year's time. So maybe it's best just to share the beliefs that people tend to have about a given topic and leave it at that with your loved ones. Make it so you're a treasure trove of knowledge to draw upon rather than the be all and end all authority on what is or isn't ultimate truth. Do you get what I mean? Because it, I see this all the time, and there is a tendency for people in the conspiracy world to get all high and mighty and on the soapbox about a lot of things, and that doesn't convince anybody of anything, let alone your husband or wife. Know-it-allism is not a good look in any way, shape, or form. So I try to stay humble with this information as well. And again, I found, over the years, my wife has become more receptive, more open, and more questioning of things around her, and it's a long process. So it is, and you can't expect somebody to just suddenly get what you see overnight, instantly. We all remember what it was like. We had to make the conscious choice to want to go out there and discover these things and learn more. And I did make a video, which was called, not well. One of the tips is that maybe not everybody's meant to know about this. You know, some people, their lives are hard enough without knowing that they're being controlled by an evil cabal on top of it. And some people are just never going to be receptive to it, or just don't have the time to know about these things, and probably never will get the time to get to know as well. And I think as truthers, sometimes we're going to have to just be okay with that because we can't force anybody to do anything. It's not in our control. You can't make people believe stuff just because you believe it's to be true, and we just need to be careful. We have to realize that these topics, truths, whatever that is, um, are powerful and they're quite scary and paradigm shifting. And some people aren't ready to have their paradigm shattered. They're not. And they might not thank you for it afterwards either. There might be a case of, why did you tell me that? I would have better off not knowing as well. And these are just things you need to think about before you open your mouth. But when it comes to husbands and wives and loved ones, patience, openness, and honesty, as cliche as it sounds, really, really is the way forward. Be long suffering, tell them what you think and what you believe, sure, but never condemn them for not believing what you believe. That's a bad recipe for that's a good recipe for a bad time, shall we say? And I think we're all guilty of this because this is the issue. We love these people and we don't want them to be deceived, right? And I'm speaking for everybody here. I know this is how we tend to be, and as truthers, we tend to be the type of people who want to help other people. I find we want other people to know the truth. We want to give them the best head start in this reality as we can possibly give them. We want them to know what we know so they're not being deceived. It's out of love we do these things. So we scream on our soapbox and from a high and overload them with information about all these things they need to know. And it's sadly, it does push them away because we forget, that's as much as we love them and we want them to know these things, they may not see it as a move of love. And these people we love, when we come on too strong, may think you're crazy, may even consider putting you away, as in your best interest, because they think you've lost your mind. And that can be incredibly painful to experience from your own loved ones. It really can. I get it, and this is a tendency for early truthers to be like this. You want to go out there and you want to let everybody know, like, because it's like, I need to tell people, I need everyone to wake up. They all need to see this. They all need to know that we're being deceived, and out of love, like, you go out there and run your mouth, and it backfires 99% of the time, and your loved ones turn against you because they don't want to know. It doesn't matter how true it is. If they don't want to know it, then you become the enemy. The bearer of bad news, is the one that gets the punishment at the end of the day. Um, Not the bad news itself. So you got to be careful, and I'm hoping newbie truthers find these things I'm saying and maybe watch these tips before it's too late. Because for many of us, let's admit it is too late. It's too far gone. But if you've met somebody and or you've fallen in love with somebody, or you're married to somebody, and they don't know these things, or you've woken up and they haven't, let's say, but you've already been married for like 10 years. You just need to be careful and patient with this information. You need to remember the life you've built with each other and the foundations you built it on, the trust, rather than focusing on what they refuse to look at or what they don't know. You need to remember why you're married to begin with, and you didn't get married to become conspiracy theorists together. You got married to build a family and have a life and support each other through the hard times together, to have a partner in life. You got and for love, of course. You know, remember that, because this is another problem I find a lot of new truthers get, or maybe truthers who have been swimming in the game for so long. They kind of forget themselves and they forget how to live in a way, because they become hermits and isolated in their own world, just thinking about these topics, that they kind of get a little bit detached from what it is to be a human being, and they kind of forget what it's like to be somebody who doesn't know these things, and it can get away from yourself and you can lose yourself. And sometimes I do think we need to remember to come back and remember what's important, that you have a partner there who is having to live through life just like the rest of us, who needs support, and we can become perhaps self-absorbed in learning all this stuff sometimes, that we forget about we can neglect our family perhaps, and again, I'm not saying I'm perfect, I run a YouTube channel, so maybe I get a bit absorbed in my work sometimes, to the detriment of my family, and it's something I need to watch and work on, and perhaps other people out there also need to realize. I guess overall what I'm trying to say here is, as what can people, the conspiracy theorists, do when trying to tell their partners about this? I guess I'm just constantly coming back to this point of you can only tell them so much. And you have to just let them make that choice for themselves to want to know more. And you need to forgive them if they choose not to want to know more. And that's hard. I understand that's hard for a lot of people. And I understand, I get a lot of these reactions when I have these type of conversations where it's kind of like, no, they're idiots. They're just stupid sheeple with their eyes closed, and I want nothing to do with them. If they're going to be like that, they're not worthy of my presence. People with that kind of attitude do exist in the conspiracy world, and a lot of people have a tendency to look down on those idiot sheeple who have their eyes closed, But that idiot sheeple you're referring to, so-called, might be your mother, or your father, or your children, or your wife, or husband. You've kind of forgotten that they're people, haven't you? When you start thinking like that. And you need to forgive them. You need to forgive them. That's the only way. If you don't, it'll only hurt you in the long run. The hatred, the angst that builds up within you, the disgust that can start to build at those who just are happy in their ignorance, as you would say, That's kind of an attitude you need to grow out of quickly, and again, it's mainly early new truthers who fall into that as well. Um, I think it's always a good idea to unplug from this stuff as well. It is always a good idea to sometimes take a break from conspiracy so you can ground yourself once again into what it is to be a human, to have relationships, to have a marriage, to have children, to eat and sleep, and be merry, have a good time, go enjoy yourself, have a holiday, a vacation, watch, build a home, all these type of basic things, get a hobby, get out in nature, get a breath of fresh air, learn a new skill, all these basic things that humans kind of need to do in order just to simply feel alive. Remember to do them. No, I don't try to bring the religious aspect into these things much, but at the end of the day, God created you to have life and to have it abundantly. Don't waste the opportunity you've got here. Because some bad people rule the world and are trying to control you. They don't have to. They only control you and your mind if you allow them in. Go out there and have a family, have a happy marriage, live for each other. Build a home, do these things while you have the chance. Don't just sit in front of a screen dwelling on the nightmare that reality truly is. And I think you'll find your relationships with people will get better once you can get past the initial anger phase of them rejecting your offer of truth, and then once you forgive them, you can start to have a bit more empathy with them, I suppose, and understand where they're coming from. And you can perhaps then remember what you were like before you knew all this stuff, and remember that everybody's on their own journey to get closer to the truth in a religious sense. If your partner isn't a believer in Jesus or God, if you're one of those people who wants to know how to deal with that, again, everybody's on their own walk to get to know the Father. And He will bring all people unto Him, in their own time and in their own way. What works for you may not necessarily work for somebody else. Everybody's different in that way too. And that can apply to the truth of stuff, not just understanding God and having a relationship with the Creator. So again, I practice all these things in my own relationships, including with my wife, and I think we have a healthy relationship on this. If you're wondering, I mean, me and my wife have a podcast called Tales Under the Big Top, and we cover loads of things. It's a new podcast with 6 episodes in, and we try and cover wacky stuff going on in the world and just how ridiculous things are going. Again, she's not a conspiracy theorist, but we have a laugh about it throughout, and we try and keep the podcast a bit more grounded in normal news. But our last episode was literally, being the wife of a conspiracy theorist, and we talked out what it's like for her, and how our relationship has been impacted by me being a conspiracy theorist, basically, and what we do to communicate with each other. So, what we do to communicate with each other effectively, and the funny things that come with being in a relationship like this, and I think it might be good for you guys to listen to that if you haven't already, so you can get more of an insight into how we deal with it. And you'll find, if you keep it light-hearted, keep it humorous, keep it open, and don't let it define your relationship with somebody, then as time goes on, they will become more receptive and open to the ideas, and they'll understand eventually, and it's just, it's not going to happen overnight necessarily. Be patient, and remember that it's not the end goal to have a partner who knows everything about conspiracy. That's not what life is all about at the end of the day. Just be patient and be there when they're ready to ask, and that's all we can do. Anyway, guys, I think I'll leave that there. I hope you've enjoyed this little talk, and I hope in some way that helps the person who asked me this question, and wanted that advice on how to speak to your partners about these things. I'll be back with more tips for truthers throughout, and many other videos and other things as well. But for now, I think I'll leave that one there, and thanks for listening, and God bless.
I want you to get together.